One message that President Trump has said loud and clear since taking office is that FEMA is on thin ice. He signed an executive order Sunday to form a FEMA review board to evaluate the agency and look for reforms. He's also floated just getting rid of FEMA altogether, saying this while in North Carolina last week.
FEMA just hasn't done the job, and we're looking at the whole concept of FEMA. I like, frankly, the concept when North Carolina gets hit, the governor takes care of it. When Florida gets hit, the governor takes care of it, meaning the state takes care of it.
Then there is this from the Republican House Speaker, Mike Johnson.
So I have some expertise with FEMA. I'm from Louisiana. We're a disaster-prone state, as is Florida, and we have a lot of experience with that. In my experience, it is very often the case that local workers, people who are working through FEMA, do a pretty good job, but often it's the leadership at the top that can affect the outcome of how a disaster is handled. There's been a lot of frustration, of course, over the last 4 years with how FEMA has been handled.
Another state that has been hit hard by natural disasters and has been on the receiving end of federal disaster assistance, the state of Kentucky. The state has needed 12 major disaster declarations since Governor Andy Beshear took office in 2019. The state has been hard hit by storms after storms. Joining us right now is the Democratic governor of Kentucky, Governor Beshear, to talk much more about this. Governor, thanks for coming on. I've been wondering since I heard Donald Trump talk about this, and when they're looking to overhaul FEMA and maybe just dissolve the agency altogether, and as he says, turn it over to the governors, turn it over to you. What would that mean?
Well, FEMA has its challenges, but there are also some things it does very well. When I look at a natural disaster, and I've seen a lot of them, you really have three phases. You have that first emergency response phase, and that's when you're trying to save as many lives as you can. After our flooding in 2022, we had over 1,400 rescues, 1,400 Kentuckians that are still alive today. And yes, we did most of them through our state police and our National Guard. But FEMA helped us bring in Tennessee's National Guard, West Virginia's National Guard, and surged other resources when we needed them the most. In those hours when power is knocked out, FEMA can help you source things like generators, can bring in some extra resources, and in the very least, bring a whole lot more people in to help in those moments where you need it the most. I think a lot of the criticism that FEMA gets is how hard it is to qualify for assistance and the rules that are out there. But most of those rules have been established or pushed on FEMA by Congress. But here's the thing I think the president's not thinking about. We still have to obey federal law. We would still have to make sure that anyone wanting individual assistance or states or cities seeking public assistance meet all the requirements that are there. And right now that's done through FEMA. So one group handles all the administrative jobs and costs for 50 states. If you dissolve it, all 50 states would have to create their own administrative arm, and that would eat up so much of the funding that ultimately needs to go to the people and to the states to rebuild. So yes, while FEMA can do better, the idea of dissolving it would put so much administrative burden and costs on states that it would distract us from doing everything we can in the moment and in the weeks and in the months to rebuild.
And that's what I was wondering. It's not that governors aren't involved and don't have a huge part in receiving federal assistance and being in control and divvying it out. It's also the personnel that FEMA brings in to do that administrative work. I get from you this is a bad idea if they move to dissolve this agency.
It's a very bad idea to dissolve the agency. Again, there are things that FEMA could do better, and we've seen it firsthand, but we've also seen FEMA improve over time. We pushed FEMA and ultimately got them to finally put decision-making authority for whether someone gets personal assistance with the people on the ground, the people that go to the house and see it totally wiped out. The challenge in FEMA, which I think Speaker Johnson was alluding to, wasn't at the top, it was in the middle. And so what would happen is a team would come out, would look at everything that's lost, would tell people, oh, you're going to qualify, and then it would go to what I called almost the call center in the sky. Like the people making those decisions weren't on the ground, but they also weren't the top leadership. So changes there that FEMA's made have improved for every other disaster that's happened since. Governors lead in the response to every natural disaster. But what FEMA does is give us more resources, take some of that administrative burden off our hands, bring some expertise for folks that have been through certain types of natural disasters before, and connects us to resources that we need. And at a time when we're all working as hard as we can, I was up for 3 straight days during the tornadoes and during the floods. They are surging those additional resources to help us out.
It's really important to hear that perspective kind of on this end of receiving federal emergency aid, hearing it from a governor straight from yourself. Another major impact, though, that's happening on states right now across the country are the mass deportation operations being led by President Trump's border czar governor. Are they happening in Kentucky?
Well, we haven't seen the types of operations in other states in Kentucky. To this point, at least. There's a big difference in targeting known criminals and ultimately putting extra resources from the federal government to finding, detaining, and deporting them if they are violent criminals. What I want to make sure is that we are not in these efforts ultimately infringing on the rights of U.S. citizens and people who are here legally.
You're a Democratic governor in what's in a red state, so you understand a balanced approach. It's how you have to operate. You have called for a balanced approach on immigration before. You've been critical of some of Donald Trump's approach to immigration in the past. These operations, as he's running them, it's something that he ran on. How do you square it all? Do you think this is the right way if this is what he was elected on?
Well, there are portions of what he ran on that I think fit into a balanced approach. Border security is national security, and ensuring we have a secure border is important. But when you look at the approach, it's only addressing the supply side, if you will, the people who are trying to enter the country or who are in the country illegally. It's not looking at the demand side whatsoever. It's not looking at the number of migrant visas that are needed. It's not looking at our economy and saying we're going to need more workers in these different areas and how do we fill them. So we're only going to get to a point where we're truly addressing immigration when I understand there are alternative facts now, but how about math? Let's hopefully not have alternative math. When we sit down and we do the math about how many new citizens we need in the United States, how many folks that we need for really important industries, and doing that math is going to be important if Donald Trump is going to fulfill his campaign promise to lower prices. That was, I think, one of the defining issues of the campaign. I think it's why he is president. But what I've seen out of his executive orders are him addressing everything but inflation and prices. We see more executive orders on culture war issues than we do on the economy. So as he's doing this immigration approach, I think it's really important that he brings Congress together to ultimately get the math right, and that could help us to ultimately decrease prices at the grocery store.